Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, entitled Grandma Thinks It's Okay to Take My Stuff Without My Permission. After that, entitled Neighbor Makes a Huge Mistake. And after that, I Want a Baconator Now. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get a Baconator, so please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Entitled Grandmother Thinks It's Okay to Take My Stuff Without My Permission. Back when I was a freshman in high school, my grandmother thought that it would be a good idea to take my belongings without informing me while I was at school. To elaborate, I had a small table with cubby holes in it that I kept belongings in that were important to me. I had autographs, signed art, and awards I had earned over the years in those cubby holes. I came home from school to go to my room only to see that the table had been replaced with an enormous dresser. Confused and concerned for my belongings, I went to confront my grandmother about where everything went. This was the conversation that followed. We've got entitled grandmother, we've got me, we've got oblivious grandfather who doesn't understand why I was so upset. Me: Hey grandma, what happened to my table in my room? Grandma: Oh, I took it out and put it out on the porch for a place to put my shoes. I hope you don't mind, OP. I thought she was joking because why would anyone use a table as a shoe rack? We already had several by the front door and I didn't think she was serious, but I went out to the porch and sure enough, there it was. Decorated with shoes, potted plants, and empty mason jars. I then come back inside to ask where my belongings were and what she did with them. Me: If you wanted my table, you could have asked when I got home. Also, where's my stuff that was in it? At this point, my entitled grandmother starts to get defensive and tries to avoid my questioning. Grandma: I wasn't going to wait for you all day to come home. I have a lot of work to do, and you should feel grateful that I replaced your table with a desk. Yeah, she thought that the dresser that she got me was a desk. I looked at her, still trying to decide if she was serious or not, and she was. I tried to explain to her that a desk has leg room and doesn't have the drawer that a dresser has for you to put clothes in. She wasn't hearing it. However, I wasn't either, and continued to ask her where my belongings were until she finally gave in and told me. Grandma: Why do you care so much about those things? It was only several awards and other crap. I had to do something with them in order to move the table, so I put them in a box while you were at school and moved them to storage. Me: What the heck? You took my stuff and put it in a box without telling me? Don't use that type of language in my house. I'm going to smack the heck out of you if you use it again. Me: I don't give a hoot if you smack me. You took my crap without even letting me look through the box to see if I wanted to keep anything. Not long after my grandmother and I started arguing, my grandfather comes into the room after hearing us arguing outside. He had been on the phone with a client of his, and as soon as the client hung up, he came in to see what was going on. Oblivious grandpa: OP and entitled grandma, what are you arguing about this time? For context, my grandmother and I never got along well, and this only tipped the boat even more into the water. Me: She took my table and crap that was inside it to use it as a shoe rack when she already has 3 of them by the front door. Grandpa: OP, you shouldn't talk to your entitled grandmother like that. I've noticed how disrespectful you've been getting around the house towards her, and you need to straighten up your act. Upon hearing this, entitled grandma tries to play the victim card and starts tearing up, voice cracking and everything. Entitled grandma: OP, why are you always so angry at me? Have I not done enough for you already? What did I do to deserve this kind of treatment from you? Please tell me. Me: Don't pull that crap with me, grandma. You've been doing it every time I catch you doing something crappy, just so you don't have to take responsibility. My grandpa gets furious at this point with me. He disregards the fact that his wife had stolen my belongings and starts going off at me. Grandpa: OP, look what you've done. You need to learn to respect your elders. You've always been a good granddaughter, but this is unacceptable. I can't believe how you're displaying yourself right now. This is my household, and you are only 15. Me: 15 or not, she, entitled grandma, stole stuff that was important to me. How would you feel if I went into your room, took your clothes and stuff out of it, stuck it in a box while you were out of town, and told you that I put it in a storage room and replaced your furniture with something else that serves no use to you. Grandma: well, I would feel grateful that someone would take their time to think of me and spend money on me. Grandpa: see, entitled grandma is thankful for things in her life. Why can't you be, OP? You need to learn how to be thankful for what others have done for you in life. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. What do you think your boss would say if you spoke like this to him? Me: I think he'd have some common sense to know that you shouldn't steal other people's stuff, even if they aren't in the room. I had ended up storming off and could hear Grandpa and Grandma talking about how rude I was. The storage area wasn't too far from my house, only down the road, so I walked down there the next day and couldn't find the box my grandmother was talking about. To this day, every time I try to go and see if I can find the box, I believe that my entitled grandmother threw it away and tried to come up with something that would get me to stop questioning her. I've seen all your comments, and I can understand why you suggested that I need to get over it. However, I will say, while this is true, I had important belongings of mine that were taken away without my knowledge. The most important being my signed artwork I have done over the years and given to actors to sign while at conventions. I don't think I can get over losing those. What would you do if you were in this situation? What would you say to your grandma, and how would you act towards her? Please let me know in the comments. Entitled neighbor makes a huge mistake. This was about 25 years ago, so I was about 8 years old, and we had just moved into a 150-year-old house that was in need of major repairs. My dad, thinking ahead, knew he would need a large garage/workshop to really get started on the renovations properly. On the edge of our yard was an ancient barn that was falling apart and needed to be torn down. My dad figured this was the best place to build his new workshop, so that was the plan. We had met and were on good terms with all of the neighbors at that point. When the plans for the new workshop were finished, my parents went around to all the neighbors as a courtesy to show them the plans and get their blessing. The neighbors whose property the current barn and new workshop would border, I'll call them the Peters, were concerned about the height. The existing barn was 16 feet high, and they asked if we could build it to only one story, 12 feet max, as to not block the sun in their yard. Sure, no problem. My parents agreed. They wanted to go 2 stories for extra storage, but just one wasn't a deal breaker. So the old barn was torn down and the foundation laid for the new one. During that time, there was a falling out with the Peters and my parents. I'm not sure what happened, but it turned nasty. One day, my brother and I were playing street hockey, and Mr. Peters came out yelling at us, "Get off the road! You have to earn your place in this town." Upon hearing this, my mom had to physically restrain my dad from going over and beating him up. Eventually, he cooled off and started on his plan. The plans for one story went out the window. Soon, the new garage that was only supposed to be 1 story gained a second in the blueprints. If they were going to act like this with us kids, my dad would build what he wanted. As construction started, the Peters came over to ask why there were 2 stories being built and were told to go forget themselves. We didn't hear from them again until the roof started to go on. The bylaws of the township limited all outstructures to 24 feet high. The Peters called the township and then a building inspector, claiming that the new garage was over 24 feet high. If it was over height, the entire thing would have to be torn down and rebuilt, costing us tens of thousands of dollars. I remember the Peters standing there, watching the inspector, with smug looks on their faces. 2 days later, we got the final report back from the township inspector, 23 feet, 11 inches, just as my dad had drawn up in his new plans. He sent me up on the roof of the garage, just plywood, no shingles yet, with some spray paint, and had me write 23 feet, 11 inches, height approved, in 2-foot high neon orange letters across the entire roof, facing their yard and house. Not only did the garage block all sunlight from reaching their yard, but my dad waited until everything else was done before he shingled that side of the roof. They had to stare at those neon orange letters for almost 3 years. We didn't hear a peep from them for the next 10 years until they moved. I want a Baconator now. So, I used to work at a famous fast food chain. It was my first job, and I hated it. Fast food workers get so much crap from people. I have recently moved over to the store next to the restaurant, a gas station, and I love it there. My boyfriend and I went to the restaurant for lunch one day. He used to work there too. It's where we met. We got our food and sat down at a table we used to always sit at and begin eating and chatting, even taking some pictures when I feel a hard tap on my shoulder. Now, I've read some stories on here and have worked in this place enough to know a Karen when I see one, so I breathed out a breath. Yes, the Karen sighs and folds her arms across her chest. I want a Baconator. My boyfriend stops eating and looks up. I'm sorry, but we don't work here. I want to note that I was in blue jeans and an overly big blue and red wolf sweatshirt, my boyfriend's, and he was wearing blue jeans and a yellow t-shirt and a Chevrolet hat. She scowls and points at me. Yes, you do. I've seen you behind the counter. Now get me my Baconator and a side of fries, and make that fresh. No tomato and no pickles. I now recognize the lady as one that always had to fuss about everything and made my job 11 times harder. I used to work here, but I don't anymore. Please leave us alone. We're trying to enjoy our lunch. I turn around only to get slapped on the back of my head and I freeze. Give me my Baconator! I see my boyfriend tense out of the corner of my eye before he slowly turns around and stands to his full 6'4" height, towering over the lady. Get the heck away from us before I do something I really don't want to do. His voice is cold as he glares down at her. He is visibly shaking in rage. I don't take being touched well, especially hit. Even light taps can send me into a panic because of my past, and he knows this. The lady stares wide-eyed at him before scurrying over to the counter. He sits down, thinking it's over, but I know this woman, and she is not done yet. I watch as the manager in charge, one of my favorites, love her, comes over with a confused look. I heard that you assaulted someone? My boyfriend snorts and looks at her. She assaulted us. Look at the cameras. The manager's eyes slide over to me, to which I nod. She goes back behind the counter to look at the cameras, and she soon comes out on the phone. Apparently, she also assaulted the employee behind the counter by throwing a drink at him, so the police were called. I watched with satisfaction as my manager told her that she was banned, and as she was escorted out. None of us pressed charges just because we didn't want to deal with her anymore. Speaking of Baconators, what's your favorite fast food place? I'm so hungry right now, and I'd love to hear from you. No, I won't show you my ID, even though it'll take 2 seconds. This was my first time meeting a Karen, and I thought I would share it. I used to work for a big UK fashion retail brand, and policy at the time was to ask the customer for a form of ID to confirm that the name on the online order was the same on the ID. The reason for this was to ensure that the person collecting the parcel was the right person, and also for security reasons due to certain customers having a credit account with the store. Anyway, it begins. We've got Kevin, the male customer, and Karen, the female customer. Kevin: Hey there, I'm here to pick up an order. Me: Yeah, that's no problem. Can I take your reference number, please? Sure, no problem. It's 123456. Me: That's great. While that's searching in our system, do you have a form of ID on you? I do. Is a driver's license okay? Me: Yeah, that's perfect. I look at his license and confirm his name to the name on the order. I've confirmed the Kevin's order, and as I go to get it, I notice Karen waiting on the end of the till. I see she has no clothing items in her hand, so assume she's also collecting a parcel. We use a zebra device, so I'm able to collect more than one customer's order at a time, and so begins my endeavor with Karen. Me: Hello, are you also collecting a parcel? Karen: I am, yeah. Me: That's perfect. Do you have your reference number with you? Nope. I used my credit account with the store. She gets out her purse and takes out her store card and shows it to me. I scan it and her order comes up. Now, when someone comes in and collects an order with their credit account, we were told to always ask for ID, as fraud could take place and this could ruin the customer's credit rating among other things. I read her name off of the device I have. Me: Mrs. Karen? Oh yes, that's me. Me: Okay, do you have a form of ID to confirm your identity? No! I was confused here, because whenever someone picks up an order, they always get a text or email to confirm it's in store and ready for pickup. And in this text or email, it always says, please bring a form of ID. I say to her, sorry? No, I don't want to. Me: It's just to confirm that you are the right and correct person to pick up the parcel. I don't care. I don't want to show you my ID. I've shopped with this company for 30 years, and not once have I been asked for an ID. I was a customer here when the store was still at its old location, and they never asked me for an ID. Me. It can be anything, even a bank card, as long as it's got your name on it. No! I don't want to. Do I have to tell you again? Me. Okay, sorry. Now, I was fairly new at the time, so was super confused and somewhat anxious as I wasn't too sure what to do. Another member of staff comes over and asks if I'm okay, and I just tell her, yeah, and that I can sort it. I go and get the 2 customer parcels, and one thing we can do is ask the customer to confirm their postcode for us as it's printed onto the parcel. Although this should be the last method of customer confirmation, as getting a postcode for something and their name is easy. So I go back out onto the shop floor and back to the till point. Me. Can you confirm your postcode for me? Karen scoffs. Who? Him or me? Me, standing right in front of her, clearly speaking to her. His. Did that to make her wait longer. So I hand the parcel over to the guy and he leaves. Me. Now, can I have your postcode, please? AB1234C. There you go. Bye. So yeah, that's it. She was extremely rude, and I honestly couldn't care if she hadn't been asked before. I told her that it was policy, and that she should have been asked for ID. Plus, it would have been so easy to take out her ID. It was in her open purse, in her hand. I found out after from my colleague that she called me pathetic and stupid while I was getting her parcel, and that she was complaining about being asked for her ID. Entitled Mother Lets Her Kid Steal My Blind Cane. So a bit of backstory. I am a 28-year-old woman who just recently went fully blind. When I was a teenager, I volunteered with my local youth group to help rebuild Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. And while down there, I picked up a fungal parasite called histoplasmosis that over a decade migrated to my eyes and slowly caused blindness. I've been totally blind for about a year now, so I'm pretty new to it, but I digress. When I first went blind, I barely left the house and was afraid to go out in public. I felt like everyone was staring at me, and in all honesty, I barely knew what I was doing. The transition had been difficult, and I didn't have any support group to teach me. One day, my husband asks if I can take an Uber down to the bank and deposit a rent check, and I reluctantly agree. While out, he messages again and reminds me that we're out of a few crucial groceries. There was a Walmart grocery literally across the street from the bank, so I figure everything in life is an experience and I'll have to learn how to shop alone eventually, so why not? Everything was fine at first, and I was only grabbing a few things, so I didn't need a card. I was using my cane and what little echolocation skills I had at the time to get around, but was still bumping into things as we blind tend to do sometimes. My cane suddenly hit something a bit softer, and I figured maybe I had whacked someone's leg, and I apologize. Cue entitled kid and entitled mother. Me. Shoot, I'm sorry. Entitled mom. Hey, you just hit my son. Me. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't see him there. Entitled mom begins yelling. How could you not see him? He's clearly right here. Now, I'm fully blind, so I don't wear sunglasses. Mostly because I can't afford a good UV blocking pair, but also I'm not ever looking for pity or to play the part of a generic blind person. I just want to be treated like a normal person, but I do understand her confusion as blindness is a spectrum. So I try to calmly explain. Me. Ma'am, I'm blind. I can't see anything, let alone your son. That's why I have to use the cane so I can get around without she cuts me off. If you're blind, why aren't you wearing big sunglasses? Now, as a blind person, I get a lot of stupid questions, but I understand a lot of them are just people who don't know better. So I try to happily answer as many as I can. Me. Those are really expensive, around $200 for a good pair, and I really don't need any inside. You're not blind, you're faking it. Here is where my blood starts to boil. I can't think of any reason someone would want to pretend to be blind. It's an actual heck, and nothing upsets me more than when someone calls me a liar when I'm not. Just as I'm about to respond, I feel a tug, and before I blink, I realize this little jerk spawn has snatched my $100 cane from my hands. For those of you who don't understand, that's like if you're shopping and suddenly the power goes out and you can't see a single light. Without my cane, I can barely move at all without crashing into anything. My voice gets shaky as I begin to panic. Please, give that back. I really do need it.
No, you don't, you liar. My son deserves to play with this more than you.
I hear her shuffle away and my expensive cane cracking into metal displays and such as they leave. I start crying and waving my arms in front of me to grab onto something, anything, and end up crashing and falling into a center aisle display, making a loud scene. Without fail, I somewhat curl into a ball and cry. I'm alone in public, in the dark, and I had no idea what to do. Suddenly, I feel a hand on my shoulder and a man's voice. We'll call him Awesome Guy. Asks if I'm okay and tells me to stay right there. I do, but begin to at least sit up and listen. This man must have been tall and built like a tank because his footsteps sounded like a giant, and I felt a suction of wind when he took off. Maybe about 30 or 40 feet away, I hear this loud bellowing like an angry lion and a loud crash. Then, before I know it, the man is back and helping me to my feet. He takes my hand and puts my cane into my palm and helps me pick up the items I dropped when I fell into the display. Me wiping tears from my cheeks. Thank you so much. I didn't know how to handle that. Awesome Guy. Don't worry about it. Some people are just monsters. This guy restored my faith in humanity and even helped me finish shopping and helped me out of the store. As we're leaving, I can hear the familiar screeching of entitled mom. Something about Awesome Guy grabbing the cane and pulling it, flinging her little jerk into a shopping cart. I don't know if she was exaggerating or not, but it would explain the crash I heard. It's easy to feel alone in a world without sight, but even through the sheer terror of being stripped of my cane, at least I know now that there are people willing to stand up for me when I need it. Entitled parent comes in after closing, gets caught stealing, and complains about being a single mom. Closing the store, reaching to lock the front door, an entitled parent runs inside, says she just needs a couple things for her kids. Okay, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Continue closing duties, notice her watching us and moving to hide behind end caps when she sees us look up. Got a bad feeling about her. Circle the store and see she has a full cart and is sweeping more out of the dairy case into it. She is actually clearing whole shelves of things like cheese and yogurt into the cart. She tries to get away when I approach her, but the cart is too heavy for her to push it fast. I catch up with her and tell her the store is closed and she must go to the register now because we need to disinfect everything. She goes to the self-checkout. We see her make the scanning motion, but not scanning the items, and then putting them in a bag in her cart. We call her out on this. She feigns ignorance. We make her scan it again. We get attitude. She gets done scanning. We're pretty sure she phantom scanned more items, but we were distracted doing closing work. She has a big total, over $200. She pulls out a payment method that is clearly noted in the checkout area, we do not accept. She starts to throw an entitled parent fit, but she is put in her place about coming in after hours and knowing we don't take her payment method. More attitude. We get the manager on duty to try to help her. Between cash and debit and credit cards, she gets her balance to just under $100. Manager gives her the remaining balance and she asks,
So what? I gotta pay that too?
Manager tells her yes. She eyes the door. No way she can push the heavy cart fast enough to beat us to the door. Manager basically says that to her, and I add, yeah, and she's locked in too. Remember, we were locking up, so she can't get out unless we unlock the doors with a key. We can tell something is wrong. She's too nervous. I say, she should just return the items until she's paid. Manager smiles and agrees, starts ringing returns. Entitled parent is complaining we should just let her leave. It doesn't take long to find out why she's so nervous. Quite a bit of her stuff won't ring up because it's not on the receipt. She had tried refusing to hand over the paper receipt, not knowing that the manager has it up on his computer screen. Of course, none of the expensive baby/kid stuff was rung in. Formula, diapers, wipes, etc. She is so busted. She thinks she's going to jail, but we know the cops won't come out unless someone is hurt. But we talk about the cops we know while trying to get her total down, just to wind her up more. She is finally paid in full. Over $200 worth of items have to be returned to stock. She paid for $100, tried to steal $100, and we returned $100. This jerk came into a closed store, tried to steal $100 worth of merchandise, and wanted to be let off the hook for paying what she kept. I got the pleasure of walking her to the doors. I made sure she went out the door furthest from her car. While walking there, she is complaining about how we treated her and saying she's a single mom. That crap don't flush with me. I say, "So, you're home all day with the kids?" She said she is. Then I say, "Next time, come in earlier. And by the way, you'll be using a cashier from now on. No more self-checkout for you." Her jaw dropped. She went to say something else, but I shut the door in her face and locked it again. Had to get back inside and put her stuff back in the cooler. How do you get caught stealing and then complain the store takes the stuff off you? Entitlement. And shoutouts to our regenerals of the day: David, Jeff, Noriaki, and Zero Cool. Become tomorrow's regenerals by leaving as many rees as you can in the comments below, and please listen to my playlist every night when you go to sleep.